On this week's full-time roundup, the Premier League has a new leader at the top. Madrid continue to apply the pressure to Girona. Bayern squeak by, and Inter and Juve share the spoils. All this plus so much more. Full-time roundup starts right now. And welcome into the latest edition of the full-time roundup. I am Matt Gesslin, of course, joined as always by Daniel Brackett. Daniel, great to have you back. I know that you are back from travels throughout the North Carolinas. We'll get to that in a second. Of course, you always going somewhere, so this should not be anything new to everybody else, but sounded like a great time. I know there was a stop in Asheville in the mountains, then all the way to the other side of the state. So you covered it all this weekend, my friend, but also hopefully you had a great Thanksgiving and got some good food in you, some good beer in your belly. What was the highlight of the weekend other than the games, which we'll get to as well? But first, the highlights of Thanksgiving.
I have a few highlights. Good to see you, Matt, after a long hiatus here. But Asheville, got to check out the Biltmore and do the actual tour and the wine tasting. So that was really cool, learning about some North Carolina history there. And then was able to see my family for a quick 24 hours in Raleigh after that. So I'm back in Charlotte now. Did 3 cities in North Carolina in 3 days. So it's been a whirlwind of a Thanksgiving, but I'm happy to be here talking some footy with you.
Again, whirlwind, like you said. Just hearing that, my brain got scrabbled a little bit, but I'm sure it was great to see some folks and get some good food in you. And of course, Daniel, not only that, but we came right out of the gate with your Liverpool early kick against Manchester City on Saturday to start us off in what seemed like an early wake up, but one that we were more than willing to get up for, and it did not disappoint.
Yeah, it was great. I woke up at 7:25 without an alarm on the dot. My body knew what was about to happen, and got to watch the game in its entirety before I left for Asheville. So I was very thankful for that. And it was cagey for sure, and teams were filling each other out. And with these City-Liverpool matchups, it's always capitalized off individual errors because they just play such good football, both of them, that it takes a lot to kind of break both these defenses down. City scored off an Allison slip. Nothing really can do much there, and they scored off that, and then we were able to kind of counter with the Trent goal in the second half. So I wouldn't say neither team it was points lost. I think a draw is a fair result for both. I would like to hear your opinion because I am a Liverpool fan here, but
yeah, there's no bias in that argument whatsoever. So we'll take that for what it's worth. I thought it was a great match. I think you're looking at two of the best managers in the world playing chess, to be quite honest, and the way that the teams were set up, and you could hear it kind of in the pre-game press conferences, subtly, Pep Guardiola discussing Trent Alexander-Arnold without really saying what he was going to do against him on that side, but you kind of knew. Everyone thought Jeremy Doku would go up against him, and he sure did, and he kind of gave Trent all he could handle defensively. Of course, you mentioned the goal from Allison, or the goal that kind of came from Allison's slip, but then at the same time, Trent really didn't put much defensive thought into Ake on that move. He gets by him pretty easily, and then he finds Haaland, who splits the center backs and puts it in the back of the net. And then, of course, like you said, Trent redeems himself with a world-class finish there in the second half to get the 1-1. A great match, back and forth. For me, it was what I expected. Almost texted you that this looks like a 2-1 game. Almost got it, to be honest. And you felt like City was still coming. They were strong all the way through from start to finish. Obviously had more possession of the ball. And I texted you at one point, you guys have been lucky, but you're also still kind of giving them a go. And I think that was a testament to what Klopp can do and how he sets up his teams. And like you said, 1-1 is not the end of the world for either team. And one thing I think we haven't really discussed enough of, Daniel, from a Manchester City's perspective, and of course they do get jumped from Arsenal, who beat Brentford late off a Kai Havertz goal in the 89th minute. But I think one of the things that we're all forgetting about here is that Manchester City has been doing what they've been doing, not only coming off a treble last season, which is very difficult, and to be at the top of the table again is remarkable, but they're also doing this without their best player. And I think that's, something that we all need to keep in mind as we look at this team and how it's a very competitive game against Liverpool and against Arsenal and all these other teams. And then there's one guy that we all forget about that when he comes back in the second half of the season, will that be the same thing? Of course, we're talking about Kevin De Bruyne, who seems to be getting closer, but is not in the lineup yet. And so that's my takeaway from this, is that it was a good opportunity for Liverpool to get 3 points. But they still wanted it to be close. And, it'll be interesting to see what happens in the second half of the season. But these are the two teams for me, along with Arsenal, that are going to go the whole way. And I think Liverpool are here to stay.
Absolutely. And there's always the argument, the Kevin De Bruyne argument, getting over a hamstring injury, being now in your 30s, that is somewhat concerning if you're a City fan. Is he going to be the same Kevin that we all know? But I mean, just from the quality that he has, I think he will come and be, if not a shell of himself, a decent player. Now, I also was looking at Liverpool's fixtures, and we've actually had a bunch of tough matchups away from home, and a lot of these big, top 6 matchups are going to be reverse fixture at Anfield coming, in the near future, if not later in the rest of the season. And if I'm pretty optimistic that we were able to survive, still being, in that top 3, couple of points back, and I think Klopp is definitely pretty happy with how the season's gone so far.
Yeah, I think especially after last season, with everyone talking about the midfield and of course the talent you guys up front and how that defense, how would that kind of cope with things, and of course you've been out without Konate for a while now as well, and things like that in the back that are really going to help and take shape. So really not surprising. I think Liverpool last season had a down year for whatever reason. They just couldn't get that momentum or that energy going, and down. We say down. They finished 5th. We're not talking about Chelsea or some other squads here that down is bottom of the table. So, I think take that in perspective too. But yeah, I think you guys will be right there. And of course, now sitting in 3rd with the points split against City and Arsenal jumping. And then, right behind them, Daniel, is a really good battle here. We saw, today on Sunday, Villa take on a Spurs team that's a little bit beat up. Some injuries that are taking place. And of course, Villa is a very, very strong squad with, Unai Emery knowing exactly what to do. And they take the points at White Hart Lane or Tottenham Stadium, whatever they're calling it now, and jump Spurs. Villa now sitting 4th. What were your thoughts on this one? Of course, Ange ball continues to be what it is. And I think there's a little bit of some of that's playing into some of these results. I think, he's got to take some adjustments, in my opinion. We can get into that. But what were your takeaways from this one? An exciting match. I could not get away to get the errands I had to get done this morning because the commentators kept getting, excited, and I turned around and more action was going every minute I looked at this one.
Yeah, and this was a great match to have almost at a standalone on a Sunday. I thought Spurs, for their credit, without some of their key players, still played a great game. Some of those new signings like Brennan Johnson was pretty lively. But I mean, Villa, going to give myself a pat on the back here. I did say they'd finish 4th, and they're kind of making me look good here because they are not injured and they are looking very, very good. And they're a fortress at home. So you usually will give them the result or at least a draw at home, but it's the away games that they sometimes struggle in, and getting a W at the White Hart Lane is a big deal.
Yeah, this one was not for the faint of defenses. Of course, both teams playing that high line, and you saw a lot of runners in behind, and Ollie Watkins looked good. He had a couple opportunities. I think this could have been 2-2 inside the first 6 minutes, honestly. Yeah. And so this was a back and forth crazy one. Like I said, from my perspective, I think Ange needs to take a little bit of a moment like we've been talking about with Vincent Kompany and what he's having to adjust with in Burnley. I think as much as I respect Ange and Ange ball and what he wants to do, it's not always going to work in the Premier League. You're going to find, especially those second go arounds where teams start to have some video on how he plays and find those teams and how to break that down. There was also one moment here, Daniel, that it just screamed that they needed Harry Kane and that they're missing him. It was 1-1. Kulusevski makes a great 1-2 with Son and puts the ball back post, and Brandon Johnson's slow to react, and it goes right by him out for a corner or almost, I think, a goal kick maybe. And just in my head, I'm thinking Harry Kane's on the back post there, and that's in the net no matter what. And it would have been 2-1 in a completely different game. And then, of course, Villa go down and score and take the lead and then add a third. So it's just a crazy back and forth game here. But Villa, Aston Villa are of course thinking about Unai Emery coming from the Yellow Submarine there. Aston Villa are legit, to your point. And fourth place is not outside the realm of possibility. They've looked good all season. They have Newcastle, who's sitting right behind them, and then Manchester United, who again get the job done today against Everton. That place was raucous, Daniel. But that battle for 4 through 7 with Spurs, Aston Villa, Newcastle, and United is really heating up, I think, and going to be an exciting finish or exciting watch towards the end of the season.
And I can't wait for it. Cannot wait for it. Especially with this, you mentioned the Man United fixture today against the Everton's first match with the point deductions here, and they didn't have I didn't think they played bad. Obviously, Ashley Young gives up a penalty, and then you get conceded off an absolute wonder goal by Garnacha. I mean that might be the best.
Might be goal of the year. Might be the goal of the year.
It definitely will be. I think. I would say that is almost as good as Ibra's bike for Sweden. I thought it was that good. I mean, from how far the ball swinging away, all the variables in that goal, and then he hits it absolutely across to the back post, upper 90. It doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, it was a fantastic finish inside the first 5 minutes and completely changed the first 20 minutes of this fixture. I thought, again, Manchester United continued to just do enough to get the W. And then, of course, like you said, Ashley Young makes a boneheaded decision and gives, Marcus Rashford a PK to make it 2-0. And from there, you turn on the afterburners and run away. But I thought Manchester United gave a lot of chances, Daniel. I thought Everton, who continue, again, week in, week out to create opportunities, but don't put them in the back of the net. For me, if I'm a United fan, I think, and that's pretty glaring for most United fans, is that defensively they're still, and even in the midfield, that transition from the midfield into the forward attacking third, that transition towards the back is where Manchester United are going to get eaten alive or continue to make some hay. And I think you saw it today, again, lanes just wide open, Everton finding balls in and out, saves off the post and goal line stands. And it just was not Everton's day, but I think if you're a Manchester United fan, you're more concerned about what was available.
And I think I know why, because they obviously don't have Casemiro right now. Shout out Kobe Mainu. He looked fantastic.
He looked
One
great.
of the best players on the pitch. Maybe they found a defensive mid who can kind of slot in Casemiro's absence and then slowly take over the role. But you started McTominay, Mainu, and Bruno Fernandes, and none of those players are a 6. They're all 8s and 10s in their own right. And I saw several times, especially on one where they committed 5-7 players forward and they lost the ball. And there was not a single midfielder that decided to hold and protect the defense. And that seemed like a reoccurring theme. So Ten Hag's just got to drill into his men, especially without Casemiro, the veteran, on the pitch. Hey, one of you has to stay home and protect us. Because if they commit too many men forward, it's going to be very easy. And on another day, Everton's going to get a goal, and a better team than Everton's definitely going to capitalize on that. Now, oh, sorry, were you going to say?
No, I was going to say exactly what you were saying, and we said it. You said at the end there, a better team is going to take that advantage. We saw that against City, who put in 3 in the back of the net, and I think that's exactly, to your point, exactly right. They need to have someone that can kind of be sitting a little bit deeper. Of course, Scott McTominay, who had started the season kind of being more defensive minded, but has been putting the ball in the net, not only for Scotland, but for United as well. It seems to be more offensive minded all of a sudden. So I think they have to just kind of level set and understand who they are and what they can do. But yeah, I think if they push forward that midfield and they leave themselves exposed in the back, Lindelof and Maguire just not strong enough to be able to take on top tier strikers. If they go up against an Ollie Watkins, I think Ollie Watkins has a field day against them, or things like that. So, or Alexander Isak against Newcastle, who scored again against Chelsea on Saturday. So yeah, it's an interesting time, but I think they as we've said all along, all they do is continue to win. They keep getting points. I think they've gotten 12 out of 15 possible points now in the last 5 matches. So with that loss coming from City, so just continue to chug along, and there's talk of maybe top 4 now. And of course, this team was so much the Debbie Downer or the black sheep, and everyone saying how poor they are and that they can't get things done. And yet here they are continuing to churn out W after W. And it's an interesting time in Manchester. Of course, I alluded, Daniel, quickly to a team that also won and had a goal scorer in Alexander Isak, with Newcastle winning at home against Chelsea 4-1 on Saturday. Pretty poor performance from the Blues, to be honest. And, an opportunity, I think, for Poach to come out and really berate the team as he did in post-game press conference. Of course, he was not on the sideline, serving a match suspension for 3 yellow cards as a manager. And you saw some of that come out on the field with some lack of discipline as well. Reece James picking up a very silly yellow card for kicking the ball away, for time wasting, which has been a point of emphasis. And then you knew that was going to come back to haunt Chelsea. And of course, he gets the second yellow and kind of changes the match at 2-1. You're looking kind of, okay, this is still not really where we want it to be, but you have an opportunity here. And then that red card, makes it almost impossible. And then right after that, Thiago Silva makes a boneheaded play, and 3-1 is all of a sudden game over at that point. So all in all, really, really poor performance from Chelsea. Just to put it lightly, I don't think that's, I think Chelsea got a little bit ahead of themselves after 4-4 against City. Granted, couldn't have come at a worse time for the break after that momentum going, not only from that game, but previous games. And then you have to take a 2-week period where, you're not playing and continuing to build. And this will be a building opportunity, but one that I think was expected. Anyone that turned around after 4-4 against City and thought Chelsea was going to be top 4 was a little bit out of their mind, and they got a wake-up call versus a good Newcastle team who's still banged up and fighting for top 4.
Yeah, I think you were pretty spot on in all that. I was only able to watch the highlights, but don't beat yourself, especially with the stupid yellows, and especially when they accumulate for suspension. So Reece James got, as a veteran in that locker room, and he's the captain as well, I'm pretty sure. He's got to kind of take a look in the mirror here. But I did see Chelsea fans calling for Poch, and I don't agree with that. You got a huge rebuild, and we've seen 2 managers who teams have struggled early on, Manchester United and Chelsea, and they both have kind of ride the ship. Some of these results are going to happen, but as long as you're trending in the right direction, I think that's all that matters. I still don't think that top 4 Champions League football is going to happen this year. Maybe slide into 7th, but that's even kind of really, you're really pushing it there. So I think your summation of the game is pretty spot on.
Yeah, still a project. I think people need to realize that too. And you're going to have ups and downs, a young squad. So again, an opportunity here for Poach to go in and really, lay the hammer and tell these kids that, and of course, Reece and the veterans as well, part of that, to say that this is on us, not a good enough. We need to play better and just, look forward to it. Of course, we mentioned a Newcastle win. Daniel, so they get a nice little bounce after really banged up squad. I think this was kind of their, if we're being honest, their B- squad with everyone who was hurt. They have 3 goalkeepers on the bench. Thoughts on what Eddie Howe is doing now? Of course, they go into Champions, a huge midweek Champions League fixture that could ultimately decide if they advance out of the group stage. And boy, that they needed this 4-1 so they could rest some guys and get the starters in for Wednesday.
Yeah, getting Isak and Miguel Almiron back after international break was probably the key to this match and the rest of the fixtures coming up, because they both were out injured and they kind of dropped a few results before the break because of that. So, when you're losing and then you got some new signings kind of back into place and they kind of hit the ground running, that's really good. And I'm sure that Eddie Howe they didn't even probably celebrate in the locker room because they had business to handle on Tuesday, and that's the main focus. Next match, who cares about this match? It already happened in the past, and let's focus on Champions League ahead, and we'll see if they can get it done in their first year or first time in Champions League for forever. But to kind of rotate into another league, we have the Bundesliga up next. Bayern, top of the table. Well, no, actually, Leverkusen?
Leverkusen still atop the
Leverkusen.
table.
Okay, we'll hit Leverkusen first. They, like always, from this season, turn out another result. I swear they've won every single game 3-0. They've made a really good habit about keeping those clean sheets. But I mean, I thought Werder Bremen would put up a little bit more of a fight than they did. But when you have your outside backs like Frimpong and Grimaldo just scoring just unbelievable goals week in, week out, it really is unbelievable. And Grimaldo, there was a stat on the broadcast saying there. I mean, I know you don't love the stats, but it was highest efficiency. And
Here we go. Get out of here with this.
He's outperformed his goal efficiency by like 5 or 6 now, which just shows the insane type of goals he's scoring. He's not just hitting tap-ins; he's hitting worldies. So I did want to mention that. And Xavi ball, it's always lovely.
Xavi ball is lovely. You mentioned I am a fan of stats, just not certain stats. That's one of those stats I could care less about.
Yeah.
But again, the guy is putting in goal after goal from the wing back position, which is phenomenal and can almost carrying this team in some points because the goals he's scoring are just so important in the context of the match if you're watching them.
Yeah.
Also, I think another big statement from this match, Daniel, that may not get talked about too much though, is that Bayern Munich went first. They played on Friday and they got the W. And of course, what we talked about with PSG and Nice and Monaco, that pressure that continues to kind of mount on some of these lesser teams. Not that Bayer Leverkusen are a lesser team, but when you're trying to knock off the champions, that pressure that they continue to add week after week. And again, that's a big deal. You sleep overnight that, going into the next day, you have to win to stay above Bayern Munich in the table. And to do that and put in a performance like they did is super impressive. And just like we said, this is going to be a battle. I think it's officially time to say this is a 2-horse race in this league. And I think, Dortmund getting the win and staying, within touching distance and fourth, Stuttgart staying in that top 4 position as well in third, but really this is going to be down to Bayern and Bayer. And it's going to be week in, week out. You go first, let's counter. Let's see what happens, on Fridays and Saturday games and Sunday games. But that's going to be really what it boils down to is who can handle the pressure when the other team goes first and puts that maximum effort out there and gets the points. So what else can we say at this point? Xavi ball is legit and we've been hearing rumors, and I'm not saying we're reporting anything on this. We've been hearing rumors that he was, of course, a lock-in for Real Madrid, but now there's talk maybe he goes to Bayern next year. So just something to keep an eye on. And of course, he's one of the most sought-after managers in world football, and you can see why week after week with this Bayer Leverkusen team.
Yeah, I did actually see that report. I was pretty surprised because I thought he'd would go to Madrid 1,000%. No second thoughts about it. But this is not a desperate move for Bayern, but Bayern knows that they are a good team, but they're not the team they used to be when it comes to recruitment. And we've seen that kind of unfold in the last 5 years. And you got players like Alphonso Davies not signing contracts because he wants to go play and be a Galactico. And Tuchel's not a great manager, and they want to love their coach, right? So this would solve a lot of things for Bayern, and they would also play a very attractive brand of football. So it makes a lot of sense for Bayern to go after a manager. Usually it's just them stealing players from other teams, but stealing a manager like they did with Nagelsmann with Leipzig, and they've done it before. So don't count Bayern out with this, but I just don't see them paying the transfer fee that will require for the coach because they already did that with Nagelsmann and it didn't really work out. But to kind of go and touch on Bayern, they win pretty not convincingly, I'll say. Only a 1-0 win against Cologne, who's not doing so hot in the table. And yes, they did outshoot their opponents and they did dominate the match, but Harry Kane got the only goal of the game. But you'd like to see more of a convincing result from Bayern.
You would, but at the same time, it's the first game on a Friday, of course, which is even harder than the international break and some of these other managers we've heard complaining about. So credit to them. Now they get the extra days to rest ahead of the Champions League fixtures. So I think the league is looking out for them in that sense. But you get Harry Kane for what you get Harry Kane for, to put the ball in the back of the net. And boy, did he do that. And of course he, gave other opportunities throughout this match, but yeah, not a really convincing result, but sometimes you need to win those types of matches too. In a title run or when you win the league. So I wouldn't take too much out of it. Of course, Champions League, although Bayern already through, but they want to put a good performance in on Wednesday against Copenhagen and kind of, turn the tide there after the performance they had in Copenhagen in that first leg. And then, again, you're kind of just looking through this. Let's get through it. First, Alphonso Davies was not playing in this one after coming back off a flight on Thursday. So, there's a lot of things that played into it. Like I said, I wouldn't look too much into this, but, it is what it was, and they got 3 points and they move on. And you mentioned, their tendency of stealing players or kind of, taking from within the German Bundesliga and kind of building their own squad without really much concern for others. Someone who's gone through that himself directly is Marco Rose. Daniel at Leipzig, of course, now managing there after stints at Dortmund and Mönchengladbach, and now, of course, at Leipzig. And they unexpectedly dropped points to Wolfsburg. Daniel, this was a surprise to me. I know you've been kind of, high on Wolfsburg throughout the year, but I don't think you would have seen this coming, would you?
No, not per se, because Wolfsburg are excellent against inferior opponents, but when they play the big match, they tend to kind of shit their pants a little bit. But overall records between Rose and Kovac kind of owns Rose, and it was on full display on Saturday as they defeat Leipzig 2-1. And we already had this conversation, so we'll give ourselves a pat on the back. But I think we both can agree that Rose might not be the guy. He's always going to get you top 4, top 5, but if you really want to compete and knock Bayern off their perch, he is not the manager that you want. And it'll be interesting to see what the Red Bull group does. If they, promote internally, or they go and get another manager, or they just keep him and are just happy with the development that he's done of, the young players, because that's what they kind of do. They turn out young players for profits. Even though their best young player is on loan with Xavi Simons, and Yusuf Poulsen starts over, what's his name? Can't believe I'm blanking on the striker's name. Please help me.
Benjamin Sesko.
Benjamin Sesko. Thank you. It's been a long weekend, folks. But the kind of, did you have any thoughts on this one?
No, I was going to say that, just kind of piggybacking off that, I think you mentioned Kovac and of course what, Rose has tried to do. One, of course, everyone's goal is, especially the German managers, to manage at Bayern, and Kovac has done that, of course, with a stint there and being very successful. And Rose never had that opportunity. So I think I texted you, one man's actual job was another young boy's dream. And that's kind of how that's kind of netted out, with Rose never really getting to that level. And of course, you mentioned RB Leipzig with youngsters and kind of recruiting and building a younger squad. No better example of that than Borussia Dortmund as well, who continue to churn out results. I say that loosely because they did not look good again, going down 2-0 first, and this is a trend for them. But they do get 4 unanswered to win this one 4-2. But again, just not really that great a performance from Edin Terzic's men. But they do get the result in the end, and they stay 4th. But I would think a distant 4th from my perspective.
Couldn't agree more. Gladbach are not a good team. They are just not a good team, and this was an opportunity for them to make a statement. Now, they did make a statement in their own way, going down 2-0 early and, scoring 4 unanswered goals. That shows character. But you got to stop shooting yourselves in the foot. And Terzic's not man management, but decisions over certain players on the team is very interesting. And we've seen the new signings that they've signed, Nemicha, Basabaini. All these guys have not exactly hit the ground running. So if you're going to shell out money for new signings, then you gotta make them play well. So I do have a quick funny story. You did mention, I thought you made an excellent point when it comes to feeling the pressure when Bayern's kind of snap at your heels. And my girlfriend's brother, he's a listener on the show, shout out Jack, he got a Dortmund jersey for his birthday, which was over Thanksgiving. and he shows me the yellow jersey, and I was like, "Oh, what you got there?" And he just turns and he goes, "Oh, this is the jersey that Dortmund lost the title in." And I couldn't help but just start crying, laughing, because how he said it, you could just hear the pain in his voice. So I did want to mention, I thought that was an excellent point by you. But yeah, I got really nothing else on Dortmund other than they need their new signings to kind of step it up a little bit, and they just gotta be a little bit better at the back.
Yeah, and of course, another team that's feeling that pressure and continues to be put under pressure is in La Liga, which Girona plays on Monday. So we'll keep you posted on that on the Twitter, which of course you can follow us on X at Fulltime Roundup. We'll get everything covered there. Of course, we'll also have our players of the week listed there later, and then of course on Thursday we'll have our preview show. So be prepared for that. And again, please follow us over there and interact with us. But yeah, Daniel. Girona continues to stay, although they do drop as Real Madrid win today and jump them 3-0 win. And they looked very, very impressive. And of course, Rodrigo comes in and plays unexpectedly. Didn't have, full fitness. You could see him come off in about the 65th minute and put an ice pack right on that knee. And of course, gets 2 goals though. And Jude Bellingham, what else can you say? Plays again and gets another one. Just gets another one when he comes on. So an interesting race in La Liga right now. And I think, Barca dropping points to Rayo Vallecano. And it's, to me, it's really going to be almost how long can Girona hang on? And then, of course, we've talked about it before, Atleti right behind those two. And can they make up the ground with the game in hand?
Yeah, we mentioned you mentioned Rodrigo not being at full health. We mentioned before Vinicius Jr. is out for a few months through injury. So a little bit of Real Madrid already lacked depth at the attacking position, and Vinny Jr. being out for extended period again is not going to help that. And they got to have Rodrigo stay healthy. Joselu needs to step up here, and then they might have an academy kid or two kind of burst onto the scene. We'll see if that happens and that goes well. Madrid do not have a great history at promoting their second team. I think it's Castilla, but we'll see. I think this La Liga race is wide open, completely wide open, especially with the injuries that Madrid have been handed. But this was a great time for Barca to kind of get 3 points and start kind of getting on a roll again, I guess you could say, as everyone's getting back to health. We did mention before Gavi is out for the rest of the season, so that's a big dagger. But Frankie De Jong and Pedri are back, which will help with that. So Xavi's got a lot on his plate. I'm sure he's feeling the pressure. Deco and Co issued out, hey, this is our guy. We want him to stay. He is going to keep winning for us. But we'll see if that actually turns true if a couple more results don't go their way.
Yeah, we've already heard some rumors and some rumblings from Barca fans that they want Xavi out after the Champions League a couple weeks ago, and then of course the pressure is immense. I think pressure seems to be our word of the episode today, but it continues to be immense on him and the squad. And you mentioned the issues with Gavi, who's down now for the rest of the season, but some players coming back. I think it's going to be an interesting time, and we've talked about this before on the pod, Daniel. They cannot continue to drop points, and they continue to drop points. So it's a really interesting dynamic to see what happens here. And of course, like I mentioned, Atleti, right behind them, of course, Antoine Griezmann getting the winner in that one against Mallorca. They really should have won this match more than 1-0, to be honest. They were all over Mallorca and kind of just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. But Griezmann with a great header and kind of one of those world-class finishes that only so few can do, and they sit third place, tied with Barca right now in points. And of course they play each other on Saturday, which will be a huge fixture, but they have a game in hand, and they're only 3 points back from top right now. So keep an eye out for Atleti. They're rolling right now. They're feeling pretty good. It's going to be, like you said, an interesting race in La Liga for top 4 for the title. A lot to be unpacked there. I don't think that race is decided by any stretch of the imagination. And another race that we thought was kind of starting to distance itself, but was in Serie A with Inter, and of course they play Juve today, and they get Juve saves themselves essentially and keeps them in the race by getting the draw here, splitting the points. Of course, Inter sit 2 points atop the table now over Juve, and look out behind. AC Milan get a big win this weekend and draw within 4 points. But to me, Daniel, this feels like it's really a 2-team race between Inter and Juve, and of course one goal down. A draw here, and of course they'll have the reverse fixture later in the season. But this to me now feels like the 2 teams to kind of look out for in Serie A.
Yeah, I agree. And we were kind of asking ourselves the question a few episodes ago, who is going to kind of trick up Inter a little bit? And it's really only been Juve. And shout out to Juve. They just find a way every time. Allegri, tactical mastermind, I guess you could say, doesn't play pretty football, but he knows how to get and churn out results here. And he's doing it again. And we saw with the glorious Juventus era that was around 5 to 7 years ago. And it seems like he's kind of recreating another style of that sort of team. So after all the trouble that Juventus got into a few years ago with the accounting mishaps and whatnot, and the point deductions and the transfer bans, they've kind of turned things around and have righted the ship. And I'm pretty bullish on Juventus's future from this season and from on. But I would love to see another team in Serie A challenge Inter a little bit and knock them off their perch and make it more like a La Liga race where it's kind of pretty wide open.
Yeah, and you mentioned, Allegri and Allegri ball. It's, of course, completely contrarian now to what is being played in Serie A, back to more of that traditional Italian style, defensive-minded, where, we've seen it become a little bit more expansive in the last couple of seasons with Spalletti and Pioli and all those different player and Gasparini, attacking-minded managers now in the teams, and essentially the Italian national team is more of an offensive-minded juggernaut too going forward, and so that's going to be an interesting contrast in the years to come. But they got Dusan Vlahovic back today, who scored and looked really good, and Weston McKennie got in, so thankfully that wasn't too much of an injury concern after picking up a knock in the Trinidad game, the first game. But yeah, to me, it's going to be an interesting Serie A. And don't look now, Daniel. Don't look now. Roma in 5th place. Respect.
How did they do that? The special one, right?
The special one is not out of this one yet, so keep an eye out for Roma. Of course, they have great talent with Dybala and Lukaku and a whole host of guys, and I'm hoping for a really fun, exciting Serie A the rest of the way. Napoli took a big chunk out of my top 4. 4th place finisher Atalanta today. Now they kind of separate themselves there as well. It's an interesting dynamic across the board in Italy.
There is nothing better than a new manager bounce. Am I right? I mean, we saw that today. This was a really important result for Napoli, right? Because they fired Garcia before the international break, hired like an older coach who coached way back in the day when they had, the likes of Marek Hamsik and Higuain and all those players before Maurizio Sarri took over. And, they beat a very good squad in Atalanta. And I didn't know, I guessed that they'd draw here. But, doing a nice win, getting Kvaratskhelia back in the mix without Osimhen, that's a pretty damn good result there. And we'll see if they can keep it up, because the new manager bounce historically only happens for the first match. So it's going to be interesting how the Champions League midweek matches shake out, and then, going back to next Saturday.
It will be interesting. And like you said, they're kind of have a bounce and then get that manager bounce, but it'll be interesting to see how long it goes for. Of course, Osimhen still out. How long will that be for, and what kind of impacts are there? There's other ways to look at this, Daniel, as far as just kind of, we've talked about it with Dortmund too, the hangover effect, right? This is, they won, in this case, the opposite. They had too much of a good time after winning the league for 30 years. And so that, you kind of expected it a little bit, but I think they'll find some form and probably finish top 4. Like you said, a big win against Atalanta and kind of separate themselves there. Another team that had a big win, Daniel, and we've talked about this team multiple times on the pod is PSG, who absolutely crushed Monaco on Friday as well to start off the week. And this was almost, I wouldn't say a win or go home for Monaco, but it kind of felt like they had to win this one to keep in touch. And boy, did PSG just say, you know what, hold my beer. And they took a 5-2 thrashing to Monaco. Mbappe shined, and now Nice, who did kind of keep things close with a result yesterday, keep things within 1 point, but this really has the makings of a afterburners, see you later PSG.
Absolutely. And I do want to shout out that Balogun, doesn't really do much in international break, goes back, scores a goal against PSG. Maybe it's not Balogun who's the problem with the national team. Maybe
it's not. Maybe it's something
weird.
Else, which we'll save for another time. But
we will. But we saw that with a couple players this weekend, or at least I did with Malik Tillman and co. So I did want to just shout that out, and I also wanted to give a shout out to Nice. 4 goals conceded this year. That is an absurd stat. I don't know historically, statistically speaking, if that's a record, but it's got to be close. And especially with a team with a 39-year-old Dante and a young Todibo, I think that just speaks wonders of Farioli as a manager, and he will not be at Nice for very long.
Couldn't agree with you more. If you give up only 4 goals in the league at this point and you're doing something right, of course, they haven't played PSG yet, so PSG may score 4 alone in that game, but we will see what happens. And of course, until the meantime, it's a great battle right now. 1 point, like I said, at the top of the league. How long will that last? We'll see. Daniel, a team that want to switch gears a little bit and talk about a team. We've talked about some teams that had some fight or slow starts and battling back, and this team, I don't think any of us really expected them to finish where they were at some point as low as they were, but Ajax continue to make the most of what they have available to them. And they get another win, Daniel, and they continue to move up the Eredivisie table.
5-0 too. That's called a convincing one right there. And boy, did they need that. 5 different goal scorers. Chuba Akpom gets the nod, who was the big signing of the offseason, have kind of, struggled to get started here. And he gets the nod over Brian Bobby, and he bags a goal. So this is what you want to see if you're an Ajax fan. They're trusting the youth, just different youth than they were before. And I hope they kind of keep churning out results and they end up top 5 where they should be.
Up to eighth with the game in hand. So they're moving up. And I know you wanted to cover some other Eredivisie teams, and this is a great race that we've got going on here, which we've touched on briefly throughout the episodes. And if you haven't listened back, please do. We cover most of these leagues as much as we can in depth. Each week kind of gets a little bit more of attention than each other. So feel free to listen back to some of our other episodes to hear more on Eredivisie. But again, I know that you were high on PSV and Feyenoord this weekend as well as you've been all season.
Yeah, speaking of another striker who doesn't play as well with their national team, Santiago Jimenez bags a hat trick. So that's really all you need to say about that. And then PSV continue to, separate themselves from everyone else. And it's looking like that's a nailed on win of the title. I know it's early and there's a lot of hectic schedules coming out, but PSV just another beast in the Eredivisie.
Yeah, the big takeaway for me from this one before we had to break, and we'll cover players of the week and young players of the week on the back side of that break. But to me, the biggest thing and one of the biggest stories coming out of international break, Daniel, was, of course, Serginho Dest and his I don't even know how to describe it. His incident against Trinidad, and of course he gets the start today, which was surprising to me. You would have thought maybe, I don't know if Greg would have had any involvement here, but maybe try and give the youngster, and it's hard to say he's a youngster at this point, 23, played at some of the biggest clubs in the world. And again, we don't want to talk too much about this. This could go an entire episode of just this kind of conversation about what transpired against Trinidad and everything, and Serginho being part of that. But it was surprising to me that he did get the start today. But again, when you're top of the table and you have a little bit of wiggle room, I guess maybe the manager felt more comfortable taking him on and playing him. But it wasn't interesting. And you mentioned PSV kind of running away with the league a little bit, but it should be good battles all the way through. But like I said, We covered a lot of games here, a lot of score lines, a lot of different leagues. We do want to take a quick break. On the other side of the break, we'll take a quick dive into our players of the week, as we always do, which of course we'd love to hear from you guys and be involved with it, telling us whether you enjoyed them, who you thought we've missed. You can interact with us on X at Fulltime Roundup. We'll post all those there as well. You can also directly interact with Daniel at Liverpool CLTFC, or you can interact with me at Life of Gesslin on X. Like I said, we'll be right back after a quick break, and we will give you our players of the week and the young players of the week. And welcome back, folks, to another starting 11 of the week. Daniel, I think I speak for both of us. This is one of my favorite segments that we do. Again, there's so many games, so much talent on display, and you and I try and decipher who are the best players and create a starting 11 week in, week out. I know we don't get it right all the time. I know we don't find all the hidden gems, and we'd love to hear from the listeners to see if we missed some players. But again, this is a starting 11 that Daniel and I put together. So we, there are teams and players that we could have put in here, but sometimes we use those as players of the weeks or young player of the week. Our formation is a 3-4-3 with 3 defenders, 4 midfielders, 3 forwards to try and maximize goals, assists. But again, some players do not have that and are just such influential players in the game that we feel like we want to include them. So without further ado, Daniel, please take us through goalie and defense.
All right, so thank you, Matt. And so for the goalie, we have Herdecki, Bayern Leverkusen's keeper, kept a clean sheet. He's been fantastic this season. Usually he's prone for an error, but he's really bounced back this season and has been one of the keys to, for their title charge, basically. For defenders, we have Grimaldo. I've kind of waxed lyrical about him, but another goal. Jamal Lascelles for Newcastle. Big goal against Chelsea. Kind of was on the outs at Newcastle not too long ago, and he's kind of fought first place and is one of the better players on Newcastle. So good for him for getting a goal in a big fixture. And then Pau Torres, Emery liked him so much at Villarreal, he brought him over to Aston Villa, and he's kind of hit the ground running. So he was an absolute fantastic display against Tottenham there. For the midfielders and strikers, that's all you, Matt.
Yeah, first midfielder out of the gate was Isco for me for Real Betis. He absolutely just completely controlled this match. Also, sort of got an assist. The goalie's made the save on his first shot, and it deflects back, and then the game winner gets off of that deflection. But again, he just absolutely dominated this match. Looks to be like the old Isco from Real Madrid days, and it's great to see him continue to keep his career going. Next midfielder is Joelinton. He got a goal as well in this Newcastle versus Chelsea match. Hard for me to say, even though it was the case. But yep, one more goal for him. One of the teams that we did not touch on in this episode, but this is the beautiful thing about this segment, is there's players everywhere. Tavernier from Bournemouth, who got a huge win this weekend against Sheffield United. He gets 2 goals in their 3-1 win. And again, they get some separation from the bottom. So that was a huge win for them. And he was a huge part of that. And of course, the last midfielder, Marcel Sabitzer from Dortmund, who got a goal, the first opening goal for that team in their 4 unanswered. So he was essential in the midfield there, kind of moving the ball around, and of course adds the goal to his tally. And you just wonder, if you're a Manchester United fan, why we let this guy go so easily the way we did. But I digress. Up front, 2 goals from Rodrigo, who we talked about coming in not fully healthy, still puts in a beautiful performance in Real Madrid, get 3 big points against Cadiz, and he gets the first 2 in that one. João Pedro comes off the bench for Brighton and gets 2 goals in his game as well, against, I'm going to forget who they put.
Nottingham Forest.
Nottingham Forest, thank you. And then Berardi as well got 2 goals in his match as well. So all in all, you got some goals here, Daniel. You got some good players that I think some of them are on the list for the first time. We may have some repeats here in the next 2 segments, but a new starting 11 this week, I think, which was always exciting to see. And like I said, just shows and showcases how many players are balling out week in, week out. But moving down to our players of the week, I'm going to let you speak here, because this is just, how can you not have this guy on your player of the week given what he did?
A debut for player of the week. Drum roll, please. Jose Morales 36 years old, hat trick for Villarreal. I mean, to be scoring a goal at 36 is impressive, but to score a hat trick and to kind of carry your team to victory there when they needed it most, that's a huge celebration and a huge cause for Player of the Week.
My player of the week, I've talked about him almost every episode, just cannot speak high enough. This man, Antoine Griezmann, who carried Atleti to get the 3 points and, of course, got the game winner, but was just instrumental throughout the game, dominating and just kind of being the playmaker that he is. And what else can you say about him? For Young Player of the Week, I also have a repeat player here. The guy comes back in. All he does is score a goal. Jude Bellingham, put the captain cape on and just take them home. Of course, it wasn't necessarily needed in this one, but he still looked great throughout after coming in off an injury for his shoulder, which didn't look to bother him today. And then, of course, at 20 years old, gets another goal. 14 goals in 15 games in La Liga, or in all competitions. Can't really knock him for that. And Daniel, a newbie as well, entry for you on this list. I haven't seen this guy before, but I know you've been very high on him, and rightfully so.
Jamie Bino Gittins, Dortmund winger, came from City's academy last year and kind of hit the ground running. And Terzic kind of struggled to get the best out of him as of late, but he responded in a big way when they needed him most with a goal and assist to kind of carry Dortmund to their win against Gladbach. And this is a player that I hope to see on this list more often because I think he's a fantastic player. So Terzic, play the man, get the best out of him, and go and sell him for $75 million to Bayern in 2 years.
That last part is probably truer than anyone can think of, so that probably will happen soon. But another players of the week, young player of the week. Again, please interact with us on X at Fulltime Roundup. Let us know who we missed. If there's anyone that we should have removed or added here, we'd love to hear from you guys. We'll try and put this out to the call to get you guys to give us your list ahead of time. And if not, we'll at least recap and let you know on X who we put for this week. Quick reminder, there, of course, are games on Monday. We're recording this on Sunday. So Wolves in the Premier League take on Fulham. And we mentioned it earlier in the episode that Girona, who are atop the table in La Liga, are taking on Athletic Club on Monday. So no, there are a couple games to watch on Monday. Additionally, this is the recap show, so we don't necessarily have a betting segment. That'll come on Thursday as part of our prediction show for you, although there are midweek Champions League games. Daniel and I couldn't find any games that we both really liked on that one. So rather than giving you guys some poor bets that could go the wrong way, we wanted to scrap that and keep some betting off this episode, but we'll have, again, like I said, for you, a full slate of Daniel's best bets on Thursday as part of the preview show. But there were some bets that he gave you guys going into this weekend and wants to give you a quick recap of how those went, as well as overall how he's been doing this season.
Thank you, Matt. And he did mention, I didn't love the UCL slate. Just one to look at, just off the record, would be the Feyenoord Athletic Madrid over at like 2.5, 3. That's really the only one. I think it's kind of weird now that some teams are qualified. There could be some rotation, so it's really hard to tell and get a feel for the game until the lineups come out. And I just don't think I'll have the time to kind of tweet out those plays, in advance. So just want to give you one play if you're really fixing for something to have money on for the Champions League slate. But I will recap for the most part this weekend here. So the parlay, I'll just go over it. Liverpool plus 0.5 point, Leverkusen money line, Athletic Madrid money line, Bayern money line. That cashes at 4-1 ish. Probably got a little bit better than 4-1, but just for the sake of rounding, I'll just say 4. So that's plus 4 units right there. Over 3.5 PSG Monaco was the easiest cash with 7 goals. Bayern, unfortunately, could not get that second to push at Bayern -2. Pretty disgusting there. And then over 3.5 for Leverkusen, Werder Bremen. Leverkusen did their part with 3 goals. We just need Werder Bremen to kind of do their part, and they did hit the crossbar and hit the post in the last 20 minutes. So that was kind of a painful moment for me. And then over 3.5 for Dortmund and Gladbach, that sailed over with 6 goals. And then the last one that I did not reveal on Twitter, but I'll reveal for those who are listening before 3 o'clock on Monday. Last play, over 3 for Athletic Club Girona. I think this soars over. So go ahead and get that in if you did not see that on Twitter or you did not write that down in the last pod. Well, Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know we both had busy weeks, so I'm glad we got to kind of record. We did record a little early. I know you'll be traveling this week, so best of luck on your travels. As always, feel free to interact with us on X. Like Matt says, please rate the podcast. Follow us on Twitter at Fulltime Roundup. And if not even for Player of the Week or X of the Week, if you just want to kind of debate a topic or your favorite team's not doing as well as you want it to be and you kind of want to hear kind of go back and forth, feel free to just add us and we'll definitely respond to you there. And as always, thank you for listening and hope you guys have a great rest of your week.